Now, this guy's willing to marry you, so be nice.
I want Oscar!
I want him more than you do, but he's on the lam and Anthony's taking the rap for him.
Thank you very much. Whatever happened to love? Whatever happened to romance?
Whatever happened to waiting until the wedding night?
Angelo, please! Not in front of the help.
Trust me, he's no help. Connie, go wrap your teeth around some lunch. Girls? Lisa, this is your husband-to-be, Anthony Rosanna. Lisa?
Hello.
Hello, Lisa.
You see that? You're hitting it off already.
Sometimes arranged marriages work out the best.
Oscar was cuter.
Who's Oscar?
The chauffeur.
You mean she's having the chauffeur's baby?
Marisa Tomei is a Brooklyn-born American actress that is arguably one of the most underrated of our time. With nearly 100 credits to her name, she has worked for over 30 years in entertainment and has several gems under her belt. Often known for carrying a rather calm, girl-next-door demeanor to her peers and to the public, with a dash of fashion inspo for the red carpets, she slowly built a name in the industry by showcasing her incredible acting range and transformations on screen. From theater to sitcoms that are cemented in pop culture history, she's consistently pioneered her own path in juggling stardom and normalcy, not exactly being the center of the A-lister status, but not really pining for it either, mainly due to her own unforgettable early-on success that shook up Hollywood and her own career for years to come. She still found a way to persevere and march to the beat of her own drum. I would give some thought to her being labeled as a generational actor, meaning mostly anyone of any age can recall seeing her in something notable every decade. In fact, the first thing I'd ever seen her in was the 1993 film Untamed Heart with Christian Slater, and even without knowing her name and strictly judging her by her performance alone, something about her seemed incredibly familiar. And with a quick Google search, I saw that at the time she was just announced as the newest Aunt May to star in the Spider-Man films, and she was once again introduced to another generation of people that will now remember her face for many more years in the future. Having dreams of being the next Shirley MacLaine, she also took up tap dancing in her early years, sometimes with her entire family and with the occasional singing, and grew up listening to artists like Tony Bennett, Frank Sinatra, and Dinah Washington. She got her start in theater, doing off-Broadway and community plays, and continued into her adult years, while being a full-time student at Boston University with a major in acting. She obtained her first agent through a weird turn of events, when she was told by a family friend's co-worker who booked commercials at a talent agency that she would most likely not find work because she was considered too ethnic to take on, and was sent away. But as she got to the elevator, she met an agent in the television and film department that saw her potential and ended up signing her. Still balancing school and auditions within her first year of college, her first credited role was in the 80s flick The Flamingo Kid. Though she originally had no lines, she gives credit to the legendary director Gary Marshall for bumping her to a one-liner in the film. And the first TV role she acquired was on the soap drama As the World Turns in 1984. Though it may not seem like it now, soap operas were a huge deal for actors who were wanting to break into the business, and if you landed a spot, you were one step closer to future stardom, especially with a built-in audience that was already committed for years at a time. Behind the scenes, soaps are known to be a very hasty sector of television, often working strenuous hours with little to no prior knowledge of what could happen to a character or a storyline at any given time. If you were liked by the public, fans were writing in support of you. But if they weren't interested, hello, life-ending boating accident. Marisa in particular was supposed to be a one-time guest character by the name of Marcy Thompson Cushman, but producers liked her enough to extend her runtime and stayed on for 18 episodes before eventually leaving after 2 years. She got a few more parts in various TV shows and movies, but the role that introduced her to millions was as Maggie Lawton in the hit college sitcom A Different World. After getting the part, Marisa's hunger for a chance in Hollywood only increased, and with that, she made the decision to not continue her real-life college education and didn't return after finishing her first year. Though her family felt wary of her choice, her mother in particular felt finishing school and getting a degree was the least one could do. But after talking it out, her family were in full support of what she wanted to pursue. Starring alongside Lisa Bonet and Dawn Lewis, Marisa played the small-town whimsical roommate that meshed well with pretty much everyone, and the show brought huge ratings for NBC. However, there was a sudden change in direction after season 1. Seeing as Lisa decided to leave after the first season wrapped, Marisa was also allegedly let go due to storyline conflicts between producers. But nevertheless, she continued on and focused on filming movies into the 90s decade.
Today's lesson in getting ready for the big sale at Tempo is be prepared and be honest. Be prepared. Make room for all the great brand name fashions you'll find at up to 70% less than you pay at the mall. This was a gift. Really.
One of which ended up changing the trajectory of her entire career. Mona Lisa Vito was the quick-witted fiancée in the 1992 film My Cousin Vinny, and was a huge scene stealer through and through. Selected for the part by Joe Pesci himself, Marisa worked hard at channeling her inner New Yorker, accompanied by her off-the-wall iconic fashion pieces and comedic timing. She says, quote, "It's such a funny movie and it really holds up. I was fresh to the business and didn't know how movies worked, but Joe chose me for the part, then took me by the hand and guided me immensely, so I got very lucky." End quote. The film went on to gain tons of critical acclaim with approval from legitimate legal counselors, and is considered a modern-day classic. And much to Marissa's surprise, she was also nominated for an Oscar for Best Supporting Actress, and went on to win the following year, which was a very rare occurrence in the history of the Academy. To go from a supporting sitcom actor to a critically acclaimed starlet in a few years' time quickly brought heaps of attention to Marissa's name. Well, it was just a very nascent career, and gee, to look back, I don't really look back at it. I guess it's kind of exciting that it's been 30 years. It was a great first experience. It was so character-based, it was hilarious, and the writing that Dale Launer did is incredible. It's such an archetype, but one that I love to play, which is you think she's really stupid, but actually she's the smartest one in the room. She also feels the impact that the part of Mona Lisa could have inspired in the future, with roles like Cher Horowitz or Elle Woods also coming in to shake up the bimbo genre, that she's very proud of, along with today's uptick in romantic comedies.
It's not very often that an Academy Award-nominated actress comes by for a visit, but we have a lovely one here tonight, ladies and gentlemen, from My Cousin Vinny, Marisa Tomei. Marisa!
Since Marisa wasn't anywhere near a household name at the time, her campaign run wasn't anything glamorous. She just did what she always did, be herself and not take things too seriously. And while that was more than enough for watchers and Oscar voters, for many years the press suspected foul play. According to Vinny director Jonathan Lynn, the film was not an immediate steal for movie studios. It mainly sold through word of mouth through pre-screenings. And even when it did sell and became a hit in the box office, Marisa was the only one that was up for an Academy. Why? It's simple. She was their best bet. While everyone was praised for their performances in the movie, the chances at this comedy being taken seriously in the name of the Academy were very slim. With the push of Clint Eastwood and Al Pacino that year, and Pesci already winning an Oscar in '91 for Goodfellas, it'd make a lot of sense for Marisa to have the nomination, but to take the win, that was lightning in a bottle. Throughout the years, we've come to know that the Academy Board is an interesting clique that basks in being as exclusive as possible. There's been tons of under-the-table deals, loopholes, and favors that are given and not always returned. It's something to invest in because it's the award of all awards to a striving actor, with the title that will literally follow them for the rest of their lives to their last breath. Even in the papers, they don't start out with your name, they start out with you being a former winner, no matter how long ago it was. It's not exactly the healthiest of standards, but I'm just giving you the idea of the big picture. No La La Land necessary. So what it all comes down to is, even when you give it your all, and then some, you still may not know who the winner is until they're announced. Not only was Marisa the only American on the ballot, but she had the least film credits and notoriety, was playing a comedic role, and was the youngest in her category. And while this is just a theory, it is believed that the Academy typically leans to vote for those with the most experience under their belt. For entertainment purposes, if a younger actor does win, it's more compelling for them to have an underdog story to sell the audience, like a rags to riches situation, or a child actor to Oscar winner journey, or a classic comeback story. But Marisa didn't have that either. Her win launched multiple articles sprouting a rumor that actor Jack Palance was under the influence and announced Marissa's name by accident. because most people anticipated a win from Vanessa Redgrave for her role in the film Howard's End or Judy Davis in Husbands and Wives. As speculation grew, the Academy had no choice but to debunk said rumor, but it was a stain that clenched onto Marissa's reputation for a very long time. She states, quote, "That hurt my feelings. It was like, hey, I just got to the party, let's dance. And they said to me, no, get away from us. Now I think of it as just another story in my life. Yeah, it was mean, but so what? I mean, the whole thing is so dumb. I think of it as a part of growing up. Just because people recognize you at a young age doesn't mean you don't go through the same things everyone else does. I was a girl, and I wanted to be a woman. Now I feel more whole." End quote. The following years were a bit rough on Marissa's works critically. The rumor gave leg room for people to question her acting chops overall, and if she had what it takes to ever top her Oscar-winning performance. So while she continued to do movies like Chaplin, Untamed Heart, and The Paper, some were well received and some were torn to shreds. A movie that Marissa didn't look at too fondly at the time was called Only You, starring her and Robert Downey Jr. And while it may be a little rocky, just hear me out. Marissa plays a girl by the name of Faith Korvach, a spirited, hopeless romantic that has a seemingly great life. However, something feels missing in the love field. Since she was young, she's always believed in the idea of fated love and soulmates. But when her and her skeptic brother are playing with the Ouija board, she's given the name of her presumable soulmate, Damon Bradley. Fast forward to her being a grown-up and engaged to be to another man, she gets another sign that the real love of her life, Damon Bradley, is out there and is on a trip to Italy. So naturally, she goes out on a whim and leaves the country to find him. And what happens next? The best hour and a half I've had in a long time. I laughed. I personally am in huge favor of more movies that are aware of what they are and know how to have fun, and critics aren't always right. Sometimes they're just your biggest haters as far as I'm concerned. But once again, seeing that they felt the need to be harsher on her works post-Oscar, I completely understand why she may not look back on it as the greatest thing to be in. In the meantime, Marissa decided to go back to her roots and did theater once again with her notorious theater troupe, The Naked Angels, which she was a co-founder, along with many stars-to-be like Sarah Jessica Parker, Matthew Broderick, Lily Taylor, Gina Gershon, and many more. She earned raving reviews for her performances and was inserted into the conversation by critics of her possible chances at securing another Oscar nomination in her lifetime. Popular Academy Award theorist and tipster Lenny Del Genio stated, quote, "I'd say she's a long shot. You know, I've heard a lot of things about her. Some good, some bad," end quote. Though I couldn't exactly spot what bad could have referred to specifically, there were rumors flying around about diva-like behavior behind the scenes. In an interview with Movie Line magazine, she says, quote, "Well, darling, I had no idea I was being called on wheels. I don't think I am. I'm out in this town, a girl better be ready for anything, from something that sweeps her off her feet to something that knocks her on her. Some people, even people I've known for a long time, automatically assume I'm going to be awful. They don't realize what they're seeing is just my same old habits from before. It's not that much of an issue, really." The Movie Line article reception not only continued to raise brows, but made her presence in the industry all the more uncomfortable. She never read the piece, but she simply said it was just humiliating. The role of Mona Lisa took her on a whirlwind and threw her into the public eye rather quickly. So much so, she made a conscious effort to deviate from the fast-talking New Yorker persona, due to worries of being stereotyped or typecast. Obviously, one can never know how true a diva rumor can be, considering how easy of a target she was at the time, and 20 years later there's still no real evidence supporting such hearsay, so I guess it's safe to deem it as just hearsay. Quote, "I always feel like I have to defend myself," says Miss Tomei, who insists she's a team player, "but I'm not sure why." Gaining more recognition for her range, Marissa played a slew of characters. The one that I recently got to watch her in was in 1996's Unhook the Stars, starring Jenna Rollins.
So Frankie calls again today. Same old shit. I love you. Please forgive me. I want to come home. Like a little kid. So finally, I say, Frankie, what does it take for you to wake up? There's a freshly opened can of coffee under your nose. The kid doesn't want to see you. Calls the mailman, Daddy, I can't stand you. I don't love you. How clear is that, huh?
In this dramedy, Marisa plays Monica Warren, a scatterbrained neighbor that has an estranged relationship with the father of her kid. She builds an unlikely friendship with Mildred Hawkes, the empty nester across the street, who is in the middle of finding herself after the loss of her late husband. Throughout the film, Marissa's character is portrayed as someone who's extremely flawed and tries to make the most of her situation, often masking it with lies and excessive drinking, and she still is in the process of going through the motions of her own life. Though there are things about this movie that would make me bat an eye at the outcome of their situations, I guess that's the whole point of the story. No one is perfect in this film, but slowly but surely you get the idea that they'll eventually find their way, even if they don't exactly show it. Marissa's performance ended up getting her recognition from her industry peers once again, and earned her a supporting actress nomination from the Screen Actors Guild, which was a first for her. She also played Rita, the nurse-in-training cousin in the cult classic Slums of Beverly Hills, which earned her an American Comedy Award nomination. She made her official Broadway debut for Wait Until Dark as Susie Hendricks, alongside Quentin Tarantino and Stephen Long in 1998. She brought in the 2000s with a box office smash hit What Women Want, and gained her second Oscar nomination in the Todd Field film In the Bedroom for her role as Natalie Strout, with less than a week's notice to form her character. And from the court scenes alone, that and My Cousin Vinny were extremely night and day. It's a much heavier story with a lot of star power, starring alongside Sissy Spacek and Tom Wilkinson, and she really manages to hold her own while playing Natalie, a disheveled mother on edge that wants nothing more than to shake her dangerous ex-partner and shatter reputation in her small seaside town. Quote, "Before I got there, in those 3 days, he found a woman who had a part-time job, who had a couple kids, who had been divorced, who was of the same social strata as the character, who was willing to talk to me and share her life with me. It's better for the really emotional ones not to think about it anyway. You just get there. If the scene is well constructed, meaning that the dialogue is true and the emotional reality is honest, you can just kind of go into it and let it hit you and react. That was the case mostly in this one." End quote. While she did prove the naysayers wrong with obtaining her next nomination, it didn't exactly sit well with her at the time that in order for the press to hold any outward respect for her, she had to measure up enough for the likes of the Academy. I'm sensitive to it because it makes it sound like, where were you for 10 years? It felt like I was a miserable failure for 10 years and now I'm vindicated. Seeing as the press could really make or break a career in record time, I'm sure a lot of the harsh critiques throughout the years hindered her from a lot of once-in-a-lifetime roles that she could have at least stood a chance at getting, if they weren't also so adamant at the time of finding the next Mona Lisa Vito follow-up, which in a way did associate her with characters that were often considered lower class. Is it because I have brown hair? Because I actually originally came from Flatbush? There's a lot of feeling boxed in, but then I feel like I've been successful, she says, then adds with a chuckle. Maybe I'm just getting into a bigger box. End quote. Although commentators were a lot kinder about her performance in this movie, it is kind of bizarre that for the most part of this period, the critiques of her performances were blown every which way. Sometimes she was phenomenal. Other times her Oscar quote should have been rescinded. I imagine most people in her position would have no choice but to question the things that matter most. And why did it only start to matter to everyone else when she coincidentally met their approval again? While many critics thought her In the Bedroom performance was the best of her career, she responds, quote, "I don't think people have seen 1/10 of what I can do. It all depends on the right part coming along. I don't think I can do everything, but I know I can do a lot more." She starred in more movies like Anger Management and Alfie, and had a short recurring role in the FX series Rescue Me. which won her the Gracie Allen Award for Best Supporting. In 2007, she played in Wild Hogs, which was one of the top movies of that year, and starred in The Devil Knows You're Dead, which was the last movie to be directed by the late great Sidney Lumet. In 2008, she snagged another Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actress as Pam in Darren Aronofsky's The Wrestler, the story of a once towering 80s athlete that struggles with his day-to-day relationships outside the ring, played by Mickey Rourke. Marissa's character plays a mirror to Mickey's as they both encounter the dwindling possibilities of their job field, often longing for something more but feeling stuck in their own situations. I think she finds him as a bright spot in her evening and loves to hear him unwind, but still doesn't see it going anywhere romantically at first. She begins to ask herself how can she go from the habit of seeing him as a client to an actual relationship. It's a pretty straightforward film that explores a lot of internal battles showcased externally, seeing as their bodies are quite literally their bread and butter. But it just so happens that in the end, only one is willing to put their heart on the line for it. Quote, "He didn't really have a script to show me, but he talked to me about it a bit. It was really vague. I'm a stripper, there's a wrestler, low budget, I'm gonna push you, it's gonna be crazy. He sent the script to me a couple of weeks later and it appealed to me, but I was still nervous about it. I knew it was gonna be a hard shoot." End quote. It was one of the more risque roles she decided to take on, being that she played an exotic dancer, and it involved nudity, which she was glad to have done much further on in her career. She says, quote, "Early on, I desperately wanted to be a legitimate actress, and was concerned I wouldn't be taken seriously. Plus, I'm not sure I could have handled it emotionally and psychologically. I'm pleased it happened later, not only because it forced me to exercise a lot, but there's also a definite freedom and confidence I've gained in my body as I got older." End quote. And just as a sidebar, I do have to comment that Marissa's dedication to doing a part this vulnerable was very commendable, especially during this unhinged era in Hollywood where journalists felt as though they could just have a go at commentating on an actor's build while asking them little to nothing about the character's purpose in the actual film. Just from the press junket interviews I watched from her research on the movie, she's had to endure so many weird and moronic comments about her body, and all she could really do at the time was smile or laugh it off because it was so routine. I mean, the things this woman has had to go through for her craft, I can't imagine. Aside from the Oscar nom, she also left this role with a BAFTA and Golden Globe nomination, along with tons of critical acclaim. She also went on to dive a bit more into the health and fitness field, going on to release a workout DVD titled Marisa Tomei, Core and Curves the following year. In 2014, she made a return to Broadway for the play The Realistic Joneses with Tracy Letts, Michael C. Hall, and Toni Collette, and was officially announced as the new Aunt May a few years later, although the reception was pretty dicey amongst Marvel fans. Being that Marissa was in her early 50s around this time, there was a conversation involving the Hollywood version of what it looks like to age. Like the comics and previous films before, audiences were usually fine with the casting, but with Marissa in particular, they felt she was too attractive and too young looking. I do recall this story when it first came out, and it's always been quite interesting to me because oftentimes the fight for older actresses on screen has never been a want for moviegoers, especially male moviegoers. And seeing that actress, Sally Field, who also played Aunt May, was also not exactly gung-ho on playing this part, mainly due to how limiting it felt. I think it's a much bigger conversation about how women of a certain age are given certain roles. While Marissa has had an incredible resume filled with many accolades, she's always seemed to be iffy about playing a mother role. Quote, "I really regret starting down this road and I really regret starting to do that. I was, talked into it. Not this, but I mean just that change. And I really always felt like, oh, I could play a lot of things. Honestly, it's probably more of a stretch than other things. But I guess I said it all." I think every actor and actress has a lot of dimensions to them, and if the scope of what is being written and being made is narrow, and you want to keep working, you do what you can. I mean, I do. I tried it. It was maybe not the right road, but I do try to make the most of it. There's been many actresses throughout the years that have voiced their own concerns with how female characters, commonly over 40, are minimized in media, often taking the mom roles or sometimes even grandma roles just to pay the bills. I don't know the ins and outs of the industry, but given Marissa's track record, she's in a really interesting spot as far as this discussion. If I'm being frank, she's always looked younger than what she was and was able to play younger as well. She's just not your everyday 59-year-old. But that doesn't necessarily mean roles with depth are all the more easy to find for her. For certain actors, it is kind of odd to attempt to age them up. Like, sure, Angelina Jolie or Halle Berry are considered old enough to play someone's grandmother, but no one's actually buying it. And at the same time, Hollywood isn't exactly throwing them nuanced roles all at once either. When you take a role as a mother, it can be very hard to not feel like you as an actress are sidelined. And that doesn't mean that characters that are mothers have no value in TV or film, but oftentimes no one's going out of their way to make sure they have their own stories to tell too. I mean, even genres that I would love to be in, the femme fatale and in a noir. I still think there are other aspects of even romantic comedies. I really love them, but really at a screwball level. There's so many, the breadth of as much as women are, there's so many roles. She also mentions tackling other things such as pay differences between actors and overall treatment because of age. Quote, well, it's probably economics. You're going to pay people who are just starting out a lot less, so try to get rid of the people who've been around and replace them with the cheaper, fresh face that probably saves time and makeup. But also, when you're older, you have more opinions. You're more able to speak up. You have experience, and the experience does count for something. You're worth something and you want to have a conversation about things, and it's probably just a headache for some people. When asked if it has more to do with economics than anything else, she says, No. I think it has to do with internalized misogyny, more than anything else, but I'm trying to break it down to what could maybe be the justification, like, oh, it makes sense on paper. But no, I think it's absolutely just internalized misogyny. But even now, speaking to you about this, I feel vulnerable. I have all these little negative voices, doubts, and it's my internalized misogyny. Like, you don't know what you're talking about, end quote. In 2015, Marissa inked a first-look development deal with HBO and was set to star in the miniseries Miss, playing the real-life political activist and second-wave feminist Gloria Steinem and the effects of her women-centered magazine. However, the project never came to fruition, and from my sleuthing alone, I'm not really sure why, but she still desires a role like that to come her way again. She has executive produced a few works since, with the most recent being High Tide and Lakota Nation versus the United States. And in 2019, she visited Broadway again with The Rose Tattoo, and ended her Aunt May run in 2021 with Spider-Man No Way Home. She currently has 2 projects out so far this year, with the new rom-com in post-production. With a resume like hers, it's been hard to pinpoint why, of all big names, Marissa's somehow falls through the cracks when it comes to generational acts. But if I had to guess, I think streaming actually plays a big part in it. Like most actors, Marissa came from a time where TV and movies were an entirely different kind of field. You started off in TV as a stepping stone, but you worked hard to be in the movies, because movies were universal. Movies made stars, and they were highly respected. But looking at the treatment of movies now, things get lost in translation, as are a lot of Marissa's older works. While searching for projects with Marissa in them, I noticed something quite strange. They were everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Some were accessible through various streamer apps like Hulu or Max or Tubi, or randomly on YouTube, while some were just not on any streamers at all, and you couldn't even so much as buy it. I bring this up because, like many of her peers, Marissa has taken part in independent films, and oftentimes it's where actors tend to do their best work. Maybe it's due to less restrictions or censorship from bigger companies, but seeing as most of those companies have either been bought or faded into obscurity, it strangely feels like lost media. And it's kind of a double-edged sword, because while some are available to stream, no one seeks them out, because apps aren't interested in promoting movies that aren't new to the platform, unless they're already considered classics. and the ones that aren't just end up wandering through the ever-changing algorithm and continue to not be noticed. And how can someone seek out a movie they don't even know exists? So, in the end, there's a lot of stellar performances to comb through Marissa's filmography, but it's a shame that most of it has gone somewhat hidden throughout the years. Nevertheless, she's had the opportunity to explore various genres from movies to stage plays, and still has ways of showcasing something new every time. Though my personal favorites from her are her romance-based films, I've never had a problem with whatever part she decides to take on because you can sense that she actually tries to find something in every role she plays. But despite all the life-changing accolades and milestones she's gotten over time, I think it says a lot about her when she says she's cried the most at getting her own plaque at the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens, because no matter how often Hollywood comes a-calling, she's still Marissa from the block. I want to say I'm sorry for that. I don't know what that was about. It was really bad and I couldn't think of a good ending. And it was just there. So, I try my best. And I want to say thank you for watching if you're still watching. And please be sure to subscribe and stuff if you want. So, yeah. Okay, that's it. Goodbye.